we already said off the top, a lot of changes. 12-day event for the first time ever in Canadian Open history, 96-player field. And as we dig in a little bit to the draw, I mean, the biggest storyline here, I think, unfortunately, is a lot of the stars not coming, which is going to make for a wide open field. 6 of the top 20 are missing. Carlos Alcaraz, Yannick Sinner, Novak Djokovic not in attendance, Jack Draper out, Grigor Dimitrov dealing with injury as well, no Tommy Paul. Maybe just the initial thoughts, seeing obviously the superstars unable to make it this year is no doubt unfortunate, but it does create a very wide open opportunity for a lot of fantastic young players, veterans, and Canadians.
Yeah, and let's look at those pros and cons, because obviously immediately everyone's gonna think, hey, sucks that we're missing some major star power. These are the guys here in Toronto that fans want to come and see. You know, the kids want to come and see Yannick Sinner and Carlos Alcaraz. You know, maybe the older crowd wants to see Novak Djokovic one last time, but it's not going to happen. And so it presents opportunities. It is something that the tournament, I believe, is going to have to look into because of our scheduling following Wimbledon. And you look at players like Sinner and Alcaraz, who went deep at the French Open, then transitioned to grass and had a deep run at Wimbledon as well. Best of 5. That's a lot of time on the court. And, you know, if you suffer an injury, that's your season, that's your payday, that's your rankings that are going to be lost, unfortunately. So they've got to prioritize how they're feeling and understand that it's an 11-month grueling season. But the tournament is going to have to look into what they can do to mitigate this from happening every year. Obviously, during Olympic years, it's difficult because of the scheduling. Now it feels like we're also getting a little bit of the shaft because of the 12-day tournament. And it's just that extra little bit of time that players coming from Europe especially do not necessarily want to commit to. But if you look at the positive side of things, and there is a silver lining here, one would be, hey, if we end up with a Shapovalov, Felix Auger-Aliassime final, or you get 2 Canadians that run deep, that would be a great way to sort of salvage things in that sense, in terms of the excitement and electricity. Also, it provides opportunities to other players that you're going to get to know, that are going to have opportunities for more points at a big event like this. Guaranteed, we're going to get some surprises when we come down to the quarterfinals. There are going to be some names there that you did not expect. Look at the winner last year in Montreal, Alexei Popyrin. Not someone that I had on my bingo card for making it a big run in Montreal. So who knows? And that's the exciting part of it. And maybe we're going to get some of the young guns like a João Fonseca or a Jakub Mensik, who are going to have a big run here in Toronto as well and endear themselves to the crowd. I think, Ben, there's still a lot of positive to focus on despite missing the star power in some ways.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think you hit the nail on the head with probably the opportunity to see some of the young emerging talents that a lot of the Toronto tennis fans are not familiar with. Actually, you mentioned João Fonseca and Jakub Mensik. Mensik, who won Miami earlier this year and beat Novak Djokovic in that final and was electric. He's never played in Toronto. João Fonseca making his first ever trip to compete in Canada. These are 2 superstars in the making. Maybe for Fonseca, give him a couple of years to truly break through. Mensik is already, surging towards the top. Those are fantastic talents. If we look, along the draw, I mean, Lorenzo Musetti being seated 3rd is unusual, but this is a guy who's been obviously to the semifinals of Wimbledon. He won a bronze medal at the Olympics actually last year, beating Felix Auger-Aliassime in a great 3rd place match there in Paris. And he's becoming somewhat of an all-court player when he used to be more traditionally just having his success on clay. I think he's someone that would be awesome to watch. Also still in the top half of the draw, I mean, Casper Ruud, who did miss Wimbledon and was dealing with injury. He's a fan favorite, and he's had some time off this season. Hasn't really found his best tennis at all points. He did play some good tennis on the clay at certain points, but I think he can certainly enamor himself to the Canadian crowd as well. Just to point out a few names here within the top 8. Obviously, Alexander Zverev is the number 1 seed here, and he's coming off a really disappointing performance in Wimbledon.
And the draw itself is interesting, as you're showing it there for our viewers who are watching on YouTube. A lot more names. It's a big draw. I mean, going from 56 to 96 is a huge jump. And that's logistically a big challenge as well, just for the tournament to accommodate compared to previous years. The qualifying draw also, obviously weaker in terms of rankings this year, because now you've accepted more players, higher ranked players into the event. So you push down, but it offers opportunities there. There were only 4 Canadians in the qualifying draw yesterday. 3 of the 4 went out in straight sets, which you could say sort of predictably, given the fact that they are ranked much lower than many of these ATP guys that are there. 554th ranked Dan Martin, I do want to point out, because he was up 5-3 in the third set against Taro Daniel, but was broken then at love. You could tell that the moment was kind of getting to him as he was realizing, oh my gosh, I'm so close to what would be by far the biggest moment of my career in terms of getting that first round money, getting some ranking points, even if you go down in the first round of the main draw. And he was really facing it from a heckler, and you wouldn't expect a heckler to go after a Canadian player. But
Mhm.
this guy, I don't know if he just wanted more tennis or he was just trying to disrupt the rhythm, but he was super obnoxious. And Martin talked to the umpire about it when things got tied up at 5-all. Then at deuce, rain started, unfortunately. So that one was delayed and suspended until today, as we're recording this now on Sunday. So hopefully Martin's able to hang in there, potentially make it another Canadian in the main draw to add to our mix of more established players that are there. But yeah, I don't know how you feel about the qualifying in total or overall here this week, but you only have to win one match to make it into the main draw now, which is also a lot easier for these players than the 3 I believe they had to win in previous years.
Yeah, look, we were more used to like kind of that full weekend qualifying, and obviously rain disrupted some play on the Saturday, and a couple of these matches, as you mentioned, have to still wrap up. But it kind of creates a little more of that drama and intrigue, I would say. We're obviously focused on Toronto, but for example, in Montreal, seeing Ariane Arsenault win a huge match in qualifying to reach main draw in the field in Montreal at the Union Banque Nationale, it creates this huge opportunity for some of these Canadian players who are in the qualifying spot. It's really their biggest tournament of the year. Dan Martin is still going to have a shot here against a pretty experienced veteran in Taro Daniel. So I sort of like the intrigue of all of that at the same time, and I wish maybe we had the 2 free days for the fans would be nice, but, look, even outside of the qualifying field, we should talk about maybe some of the main draw wildcards because so many veteran Canadian players. I think we saw this probably coming if we look in the rearview mirror over the past year and a half, but and especially this past year, and we had him on during qualifiers at Davis Cup. Vasek Pospisil at that time in February announced his retirement from Davis Cup. He alluded to the fact that his official retirement from professional tennis would come later in the year, and great spot for him to call it a career here at the National Bank Open in Toronto. He receives a main draw wild card, and really not reflective of his tennis over the past couple of years, but reflective of his tennis and career as a whole and how important he's been as a Canadian ambassador for this sport.
This guy has given more to Canadian tennis than almost anybody in the history of the sport. He's basically like Captain Canada. He's followed in the footsteps of Dan Nestor, who obviously played a lot longer. His body allowed him to play longer. And as a doubles specialist, that also lent itself to a better time, physically speaking. Vasek really wanted to make it work in singles, and unfortunately, his body just won't allow him to do it. He says he's healthy now. He said in pre-tournament press yesterday that he feels he could get another year or 2 out of his body when he's feeling healthy and still make a go of it, but that he just doesn't have it in him anymore to grind it out like that and to put in
Mhm.
that effort that it would require. He
Yeah.
seems very, very comfortable with the fact that now this is the end. He's ready for what's next. He's got his hand in a lot of different pies in terms of businesses and opportunities. He's not going to be lacking things to do, that's for sure. And I asked him yesterday if he could sort of recap what the top 3 moments of his career have been. And it's been a great career. I mean, he made his first National Bank Open appearance in 2008. He was such a baby-faced kid back then. Him and Milos had that great doubles win against Novak Djokovic and Rafa Nadal in Toronto that was just electric. And he certainly carved out a very, very solid and respectable career as an ATP Tour player. His 3 career highlights: the doubles win at Wimbledon with Jack Sock, of course, his 1 Grand Slam title, the Davis Cup win for Canada, and his 2013 semifinal appearance at the National Bank Open in Montreal, where he fell to Milos Raonic in 3 sets. So those 3 stood out for him. And you know what? There are a lot of tennis players out there that would be super jealous of anyone having those 3 accomplishments in their career.
Yeah, 100%. And yeah, I think we'll always remember that massive Davis Cup win from a few years ago. I think that that's going to be the standout memory for me, without a doubt. What that team was able to accomplish in 2022 and how big of a focal point he was to that victory. A couple other Canadians who did get that main draw wild card, and he was a guest just a few weeks ago after he played qualifiers at Wimbledon. Liam Draxel getting wild card. You see here, he's in the bottom half of the draw and gets a matchup with Pablo Carreño Busta in the first round. Draxel really, really has earned this spot beyond, moving up to be able to play in Grand Slam qualifiers. He turned around after Wimbledon, won the Winnipeg Challenger, and then went to the finals of Granby. So he's really had a fantastic season on the Challenger circuit, and he's someone who's been kind of steadily knocking on the door to try and get into these ATP main draw events. He's looking for that first ever victory at an ATP main draw event. And look, Gabriel Diallo did this a couple years ago, getting his first ATP main draw win against Dan Evans. Both of these guys came from Kentucky. Maybe Draxel can follow suit.
Yeah, when I look at the Canadians here, I feel like on the women's side, which we'll get to shortly, there's a little bit more depth in the pipeline. There's a little bit more like
True.
prospects on the women's side. But on the men's side, we've got like a healthy contingent that are in. As you mentioned, like the wild cards are very deserving wild cards here. And Draxel going up against veteran Carreño Busta. I mean, I feel like he could sink his teeth into that match. The winner gets Arthur Feast. I think that's a pretty tough second round match, but I think Draxel's going to have an opportunity here.
For sure.
Diallo. I mean, we've spoken so highly of Diallo this year, and truly, he's been the most consistent of the Canadian men. I feel like we talked earlier in the season about how, hey, I wonder if he could finish as the number one ranked Canadian man this year. The more I think about it, the more I think that's a very realistic possibility. The gap
Hmm.
between him and Dennis and Felix is narrowing. He's got to buy. The fact that he's seated here again is just such a huge, like, props to him for all the improvements he's made over the last year to get to this stage.
Yeah.
And he's in a section where, potentially Taylor Fritz in the third round, but Taylor Fritz was also on the court till 2 a.m. in DC the other day, plays a ton of tennis. Fatigue perhaps could be setting in there. And I don't think Diallo's afraid of anybody. So I don't mind him whatsoever in that matchup if it gets there as a potential to continue moving on. And then, look, we've got Galliano, Alexei Galliano, who I saw on site yesterday, all smiles, looking very loose and relaxed.
Hmm.
And we've got Nicholas Arsenault, who is probably the most unfamiliar name to tennis fans listening, but Ariana's brother, obviously, getting the opportunity here. And then let's look at Felix and Dennis and what we think of their two draws.
Yeah, certainly. If I start with Denis Shapovalov, let's begin there because we spoke about the disappointment at Wimbledon, and I thought he was, hopeful to maybe win a couple matches there at the All England Club. It's kind of historically been his best Grand Slam, and he was in a tough section of the draw. He lost first round there, and to a player he was certainly favored against in Mariano Navone. I was a little down on Dennis after that, but for his ability to quickly turn around, win Los Cabos, win his second title of the season, and deliver just a great complete week on the hard courts, not dropping a set. He beat the American Kovacevic in the finals. Just some really flawless tennis. And, every time we count Dennis out, he gives you that reminder of just how unbelievably good he can play when he's locked in and focused. And I do think he's going to be incredibly locked in and focused on Toronto. I think he's taken in the pressures maybe not so great in the past. I remember Tiafoe beating him on center court in straight sets a handful of years ago here where Dennis didn't play his best. But, we remember the bright-eyed blonde, long-haired kid in 2017 making a run to the semifinals. I think Dennis has a pretty good perspective coming into this tournament. And you look here, 22nd seed, his draw, Lerner Teen would definitely be a challenge, a lefty on lefty in the first round. But if he gets through that, I like his path here against, one of maybe a big server in Opelka or Mahach. I would favor him against Musetti on a quick hard court, to be honest. And I certainly think there's a pretty good path here. Even Casper Udo Gobert, like he could really get through this quarter if he's playing good tennis.
I mean, he's certainly got the talent to do it. The ability to do it is there. It's funny how when you're a kid, when you're younger, you don't really know the pressures that exist. And, we saw that when he beat Nick Kyrgios in Toronto years ago.
Mhm.
And we saw that in that run, as you mentioned, beating Nadal on the way to the semifinals in Montreal. And then you get older and you start realizing the number of opportunities you have. The pressure starts to sink in. Suddenly you're the favorite in many of these matches, and that weighs on you differently as well. What I want to see from Dennis is I don't want to see him content with winning Los Cabos. Like, I don't want that to be like,
Yeah,
oh, yeah, that proves that I'm, exactly where I need to be. And that's the kind of wins that I should be satisfied with. Yeah,
completely.
I enjoy that moment for sure. I'm not saying don't enjoy that moment, but don't be like, yeah, that's like my ceiling. Like, that's, all that I should be doing. That should make him hungry to take that to the level of a 500 tournament or a 1,000 tournament, where he's certainly got the talent to go deep. So hopefully we can see that from him here. He was out practicing with Mensik yesterday on the court, so testing his game against some of the best, which is nice to see.
Mhm.
Felix Auger-Aliassime, I mean, he's had it tough at this tournament, I feel like in recent years.
Yeah.
I'd love to see a good run from him, and I think he's got the draw to do it here. And hopefully he can take some of that energy from winning the Hopman Cup, which he did alongside Bianca Andreescu, and translate that into something here in Toronto.
Yeah, look, 21st seed. I have to say, I think he has a pretty tough draw, to be honest.
Do you? Okay, I think in terms of where you could be placed otherwise, maybe it's
Okay,
not so bad. But I know Shelton's in there, but Shelton also coming off a deep run in DC. So,
true.
but go ahead. But go ahead.
Yeah, so I mean, I like his opening round match, probably Fabian Marozsan, who does have a beautiful ground game, but if Felix is really steady and solid and serving well, which I think is going to be really important, there's no reason to think he shouldn't win his first match. But Flavio Caboli, who just made the quarterfinals at Wimbledon, this is his first tournament since the All England Club, I believe. He should be pretty fresh and ready to go, and he's the 13th seed. Yeah, maybe favor Felix on the hard
On a hard,
courts
on a hard.
there. Yeah, that's fair. And then I kinda look just below there, as you mentioned, Ben Shelton is seated 4th. Brandon Nakashima hits a really big ball. So there's some, obviously 2 great Americans in this corner. Shelton just made, semis in Washington. And then top half, look, Dimmenauer, I think, to me, is dangerous. I have no faith right now in Stefano Tsitsipas, let's be honest. He crashed out of Wimbledon. He had that pretty public spat with Goran Ivanisevic, who said he was an unprepared player. And as from my understanding, he split with Paula Badosa and he split with Ivanisevic as his coach. So it's hard to believe. And it's crazy to think this guy was in the finals here in Toronto in 2018 and looking like one of the, future stars of the game, how
Well,
much
and he
he's kind
was
of
right.
fallen.
He was right. Like, he for a very lengthy period of time was a top 10 presence.
Mhm.
Who knows if we can get back there or not? I mean, certainly on the mental side of things, there's issues to be dealing with there. Those comments from Ivan Isavic, I think, were pretty scathing and pretty
Yes.
warranted, I guess, as well. Like, look, Goran has worked with some of the best in the game and was a former player who won a Grand Slam, so he knows what it takes to get there. So for him to make those comments, you got to believe those are legit.
Yeah. Well, who in this, if I look at this bracket, like who is the most dangerous player? And I kind of go back to maybe Alex Dimmenauer was in the finals here in Toronto a couple seasons ago. And that at the time, as you remember, as we both remember, that was sort of his big time breakthrough from sort of leapfrogging out of that regular top 20 place to now being, sort of somewhat of a top 10 mainstay or top 10 to 15 mainstay. And to me, like pretty wide open draw here. This could be a pretty big opportunity for him.
Yeah, he's got to get here first, though, because he is still playing in DC in the finals there against Davidovich Fokina, right? So
Yeah.
does he then have the energy and the desire to come to Toronto, or does he say, "Hey, I'm going to have to take a pass and rest up for Cincinnati"? That remains to be seen. But if he does come here, then in that section, I certainly like him, and then Francis TFO as well, who always gets huge crowd support here in Toronto. Of course, he had that electric first round loss to Milos Raonic 2 years ago. That was quite unexpected, but highly, highly entertaining. Cam Norrie's in there as well, who just had a bit of a resurgence at Wimbledon back at home. So
Yeah.
there are some names to look out for there. Um, but yeah, fingers crossed that Felix can at least get a win or two and maybe use that momentum to push a Ben Shelton should they face each other in the round of 16 there.
Yeah, totally. Just checking in on this bottom quarter as well. I think we could see some really interesting tennis. As you mentioned, Arthur Fils. Like if we get a Fils versus Draxel, if he has a chance to win his first match, Yuri Lehechka, is a huge ball striker. If we do have Diallo versus Fritz, that would be a rematch of their 5-setter at Wimbledon. So that would, I think, certainly be. I mean, I would take that as a night match for sure on center court. So, and
Absolutely.
Andre Rublev, who's been up and down, but he made the finals in Montreal last year. So kind of big for him to defend some points. So there's still like a lot of really good tennis in the bottom quarter to me as well.
And you know what? The night matches are going to be fantastic here, especially as we get later into the tournament, where from August 4th until the finals on Thursday, August 7th, there's only going to be night matches on those 4 days. So that's going to put the emphasis on prime time. There's some great night matches to start as well. So tonight, Sunday night, for those listening today, we've got Vasek Pospisil in what could very well be the final match of his career, followed by Brazilian João Fonseca, who I think the crowd is just going to go crazy for. On Tuesday, we've got number one seed Sasha Zverev playing, as well as Denis Shapovalov. And on Wednesday, we've got Taylor Fritz and Felix Auger-Aliassime. Again, those are just the night matches. So some pretty fantastic stuff. Ben, maybe we should do a little prediction here of who we're expecting for the Final Four, the semifinal picks in Toronto. If you want to go first for the men, I'll go first later on when we look at the women's draw in Montreal.
Yeah, look, I was grappling with this. I'm not going to go with the number one seed. He's been very inconsistent, I think, at times this season and coming off big disappointment at Wimbledon. So I'm not going to go there. I think this, call me a homer because I've expressed that I'm a fan of his. Why not João Fonseca? I think this is a huge opportunity for the Brazilian in such an open field. There's no reason to think he can't take out Arnaldi in his second round match if he beats the qualifier. I think Zverev is vulnerable, and then the path there to me is pretty good. I mean, Cerundolo, great player. He has played well here in the past, but more dangerous maybe on clay courts. Daniil Medvedev has looked fragile all season. Alexei Popyrin kind of pressure defending, and Holger Rune, you don't really know what you're going to get. So I do think Fonseca could be a semifinalist. If I stay here on the top half of the draw, I'm going to think that Lorenzo Musetti actually backs up his seed. I know I spoke highly of Denis Shapovalov, that he has an opportunity here, but Musetti is kind of the guy I trust. I think he can make the semis. And then bottom half is kind of where I'm looking towards the potential winner. I have Alex de Minaur in the semifinals. And then on the bottom half of the draw, I have Jakub Mensik in the semifinals.
Okay. Well, let me have a look here. I'm going with the number one seed.
Okay.
Not because I like to, but I feel like this is exactly the kind of tournament where he's actually going to live up to his ranking and his billing with the top players away, with Sinner and Alcaraz away.
Sure.
You know, it's just going to allow him perhaps that opportunity. So I got Zverev in one. I got Casper Ruud in the other, who I think his game is going to click here. And then I went with the homer pick, and maybe this is just wishful thinking, but come on, Felix, let's go for a run here. So I'm going to take Felix to come out of there against some players that might be a little bit banged up and tired from DC. And Jakub Mensik, who I've seen hitting, looking really strong so far. He was at 10XTO hitting actually the other day for a promo I was doing with them. And he looked good hitting with Shapovalov as well. So I'm going to take Zverev, Ruud, Felix, and Mensik as my 4 semifinalists. And let's just wait and see who ends up there. I mean, there's so many names in a tournament like this. I can't wait to see the upsets that we're undoubtedly going to have. A couple players that I just want to also mention that I saw in qualies yesterday, not playing in qualies, but practicing. And let me just remind fans who are going, the practice courts are sometimes the most fun area to be at the National Bank Open. You can get so up close, and it's really neat to see the practice partner combination. So yesterday we had Gael Monfils, who at the age of 38 is still going strong. This will be his 14th Canadian Open appearance, and he was hitting with Giovanni Mapesci-Pericard yesterday. And that was a fun pairing. Just great to see someone his age still working his butt off in practice, just wanting it so much still at this stage of the game. And it was something to see Riley Opelka, who he walked behind Mapesci-Pericard on the practice courts. And it's very rare for the Frenchman to look small.
Yeah.
But his 6'8" frame compared to Riley Opelka's 6'11" frame, definitely you notice the difference there. And, Opelka has not been back here since his improbable run to the finals during that bubble year of 2021 where he lost to Daniil Medvedev.
Yeah.
This is his first time back. I'm not saying I expect anything like that to happen, but boy, with a serve like that, nobody's going to want to line up against this guy, that's for sure.
Thank you guys so much for watching us at Matchpoint Canada. If you like our work, follow along, hit the subscribe button below.